You're welcome.
How's it going, everybody? I'm Josh
There's a
Campbell.
little lesson on
And,
iPad.
A company called Magic and Mike. We do interactive product design and strategy for mobile devices, desktop applications, web applications, and just general user experience. Today, I'm going to hopefully we're going to talk about multi-screen device strategies. That's kind of a big word. But basically what that can mean to me is devices like phones, tablets, PCs, and TVs, and how we design experiences that go across those different things. It can also mean just designing for different kinds of phones. Android phones, iPhones, Blackberries. It can also mean coordinated experiences between different screens, like a mobile device and a TV. So we'll talk a little bit about how do we target experiences. So we're going to look at kind of what the market looks like around mobile devices today, some interaction patterns, and how we target different interaction patterns for different devices and make the most of what we're designing. We'll look at some gestural differences between devices and coordinated screen designs and how that can play a role in really enhancing user experience. I'll try to save some time for Q&A. So the first thing I want to talk about are kind of what I call considerations and constraints. Considerations are these decision points that you have in your design. They're the things that you weigh, the options. Constraints are the known fixed elements that you have. So screen size, resolution, what operating system you're going after. All those things are the fixed things. You can't change those. You have to design for them. So let's take a look kind of at the mobile landscape overall. Actually, before we do that, how many people are consider themselves designers? Okay, great. About developers? None of the above. All right, cool, great. So some of this may be familiar, some of it may not. If it's not, sounds good. So impact of product and software application designers. One of the things that I come from Motorola in a previous life, and we designed applications and operating systems and hardware products, which was great for us. And we controlled the platform that we were designing on, which was great. We could do whatever we wanted. As application developers, you're at the mercy of what the OEMs create for you. So when somebody decides to move a camera key from one side of the device to the other side of the device, and it no longer fits into some sort of holster that you built as a third-party add-on or something else, you can't take advantage of that anymore. So you have to always be adapting to what new hardware is out there. So I want to kind of take a look at an easy example, hopefully. So iOS, as we know, is a relatively simple operating system. Apple has kept it fairly focused. We expect hardware bumps every year. They've changed very little over the course of the life of iOS. Aspect ratio really hasn't changed. Form factor hasn't changed greatly. But even now when you're designing for iOS, you still need to consider what version you're going to use. Is it iOS 3? Hopefully that's dying off. iOS 4, now iOS 5. Thinking about when your application is going to come to market, how long of a lead time do you need to get through the Apple Marketplace, to get your app out? iOS 5 may already be out there for any app that you might be starting now. Whether or not it's Retina display or the original display. That affects the icons that you're designing, the screen layouts. If it's iPad or iPhone, so a same application can run on multiple devices, but maybe it's going to run really small or in a really bad kind of double screen resolution mode. So even if we think about a constrained, focused platform like Apple's iOS, it still requires you to think about the things that Apple has done in their product design and their software design in your application design. Now, Android, on the other hand, is what I would call much less focused. There are 6 different versions of Android today, and I'm guessing in the next couple of months we'll at least have a 7th. So Cupcake, Donuts, Eclair, Froyo, Gingerbread, and Honeycomb, affectionately call them, are all still in the market at various levels. So, Cupcake is hovering around 2%. Cupcake is devices like the HTC G1, the Motorola Click launched on Cupcake. Donut were some devices that came a little bit after that, HTC Magic, the Motorola Backflip, and a number of others. Eclair, we started to see new products like the Droid from Motorola. That was probably one of the original launches on Eclair. And then we saw Froyo. And most devices have moved from either Cupcake, Donut, Eclair up to Froyo, which is great. We're seeing people upgrade. It takes a long time, though, because Android doesn't necessarily do a great job of informing everybody about what they're going to do next. So you find out that Froyo is coming out when some device launches with Froyo, and then everybody scrambles to try to figure out how to upgrade their phone so that it'll run on Froyo, or Froyo will run on their hardware. And then the new products with Gingerbread, I'm seeing not too many there. It's a fair number compared to Donut and Cupcake, but really nothing compared to Froyo. And obviously people haven't started upgrading, even though Gingerbread's available. Honeycomb, we see even less devices. It's certainly a great platform, but there's very few devices out there, and even fewer consumers have them. One of the other constraints that we have with Android is the screen resolution. So there's 3 different screen resolutions: HDPI, MDPI, LDPI. Android goes ahead and makes it a little stranger because they define small, normal, large, and extra large versions of those. So you see most devices are HDPI normal, which maybe the Motorola Droid is an HDPI normal device. But the Motorola Zoom is also a HDPI normal device. An MDPI normal device would be something like the HTC G1, the HTC Magic. They're smaller screens and less resolution. Now, an interesting thing here is this MDPI large. So that's a small resolution device with a larger than normal screen. There's actually a fair number of these. And we saw a lot of them at CES this year. They were kind of knockoff tablets and things like that that people were trying to create tablets. It took a long time for them to come to market. Some of them we still haven't seen actually make it to market. But we saw a lot of them at the show. And I think that's what's accounting for that. And LDPI, thankfully, we see very few of those. Anybody who's tried to design for LDPI Android, it's a little bit extra constrained. And to further complicate the matters with HDPI, there's different hardware manufacturers have different flavors of HDPI. So you've got the 800 480s, 854 480s, 960 540s, and 1280 800s. Those are all the same, different resolutions that all equate to HDPI. And for the 1280 800s, those are drastically different sizes. So if we just take phones and take tablets out for 1280, you've got 3 different sizes of 800 480s. These are all from AT&T's product webpage the other day. So these are, you can all go to AT&T's market today. This is what people are buying. On the smallest side of an HDPI, you've got 854 480, but of course it's also one of the highest resolutions. HD 960 540 at 4 inches is much bigger than the 4-inch 840. So what that means is your icons, your target sizes, everything on the device is a little bit different. So depending on what you're optimizing for, you could make a touch target that's just not touchable, depending on which device or which hardware manufacturer you're targeting. Not to mention there's innumerable differences in processor, color depth. I think as I was scanning through the products the other day. There were 65K colors, 16 million colors, 24-bit colors. Then the hardware button placement differences. And does this device have a search key, or does it not have a search key? Where did they decide to put the menu key on this device? All of that has a relationship to where you're putting your hands and things like that and so on. And the last thing that probably makes devices pretty different is the UI themes that various hardware manufacturers like to put on their devices. I don't blame the hardware manufacturers because I used to do it. But everybody needs to differentiate somewhere. But it does create a lot of complexity for people designing applications. I'll give you an example. At Motorola, we designed a theme that was darker than normal. So the buttons were a dark gray, and the text on the buttons was a white color. Android's default color was a light gray button with black text on it. So any third-party developer that thought that they were getting a button that had a white button with black text on it, so they copied that, and then we changed what the button color was. Next thing you know, everybody's got these third-party apps that no one can see the text in the buttons. It was a real kind of challenge. And it continues to evolve. So Android started with a light, what do you call it, status curtain, notification bar, where you get your little status icons about what's going on in the UI. That started out light on Cupcake, Donut, Eclair, and Froyo, and then it moved to a darker color. So now your status icons, you want them to be white with black on the outsides, whereas before you want it to be black with white on the outsides. It's a little crazy to keep up with. And that's just iOS and Android. The rest of the market is probably just as varied. BlackBerry, Symbian, Windows, and Palm all have lots of variation. They're almost, I'd put BlackBerry in the realm of being a feature phone almost in terms of the differences between BlackBerries. But if we look across the landscape of how many devices we're looking at, these are all phone types, so smartphones and feature phones. iOS, still in North America at least, is the leader, around 36%, Android around 28%, BlackBerry's hovering around 20, 21, 22, Symbian's pretty low, and other feature phones around 8.2. So not too many other phones. We're definitely seeing the North American market switching to a smartphone market. Now, if you look worldwide, obviously it changes a little bit. We still see Symbian really strong in Asia and Europe. And the three on the left here are largely being driven by North America. Windows Phone and all the feature phones and WebOS and everybody else is stuck in this other 15%. Now, if we look at just smartphones in North America, I think that Chad was saying earlier, iOS is very strong. But the market is shifting, and Android is starting to take some of that overall market share from iOS, which is good and bad. We like competition. It's harder to design because Android's the one that's really fragmented, and iOS was the one that was relatively tight and constrained. So it just makes everybody's lives a little more complicated. BlackBerry coming down a bit, Symbian coming back up, WebOS losing market share, Windows Phone gaining market share, and with Nokia starting to ship Windows Phone devices, generally would imagine that Windows Phone is going to go up, take some of iOS, but primarily I would expect Windows to take BlackBerry's market share.